What's going on, movie fans? My name is Michael Weer. I love talking about movies, and today we're going to talk about the 33rd entry into the MCU. And it just occurred to me that there are now 33 entries into the MCU, and I turned 33 this year.
Coincidence? I think not!
But with that said, today we're talking about The Marvels, and The Marvels, of course, is a follow-up sequel to Captain Marvel that came out in 2019. It's also a follow-up sequel to the events of the Miss Marvel Disney Plus show that I did not watch, and it's a follow-up to WandaVision because it follows the character of Monica Rambo there. So yes, while this movie is a sequel follow-up to Captain Marvel, it's also a follow-up to Monica Rambo's story and Kamala Khan, aka Miss Marvel's story as well. So you get three main characters in this movie. And going into this movie, I didn't have high expectations because Marvel just hasn't been doing it for me lately. I did enjoy Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, but still I had problems with the way they ended that movie and how they wouldn't commit to killing any of the Guardians off. Like, if you want to make a finale Guardians movie like James Gunn did, it would have been cool to see them actually kill a Drax or even go as far as kill Star-Lord. Like, you could have done something pretty shocking and would have made that movie like, whoa, I can't believe they went that way. But in the end, they were just like, nah, everybody gets a happy ending. And while I understand it's Marvel and it's made for both adults and kids, it would have been cool to see them go a little bit darker. But with all that said, here we are. We got to the Marvels. I went and saw it yesterday. And with very low expectations, I had a good enough time. I'm kind of spoiling how I'm going to feel about this movie later in the review, but here we go. Let's do the review for The Marvels.
Higher. Further. Faster.
And so, guys, The Marvels is directed by Nia DaCosta, and it stars, well, it brings back several MCU characters. So instead of listing off all the stars' names, I'm just going to go through the characters that it brings back. And again, it brings back Carol Danvers, or Captain Marvel, as she's also known. It brings back Kamala Khan, or Miss Marvel, as she's also known. It brings back Monica Rambo from the WandaVision show. You remember that she also got Captain Marvel-esque powers. And the last person of note it brings back is Nick Fury. It's very important. Those are the main characters of this movie. They're the ones that kind of keep the story going in the direction that it needs to go. As for the synopsis itself, you get Carol Danvers, Monica Rambo, and Kamala Khan all get their powers entangled with each other after Carol Danvers and Monica Rambo both touch different sides of reality and their powers get entangled. Now, I really can't explain how that happened because even the movie can't explain how that happened very well. They'll throw out like a bunch of quantum mechanics, blah, 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 and then they'll all look at it and be like, we're entangled. And they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And as the viewer, you're just like, I'm going to go along with that. So sure. Well, all of these powers are entangled, and it's kind of funny watching them all try to figure out how and why this is going on. While all that's happening, you have the villain of this story in Dar-Benn. I believe that's her name. She is the leader of the Kree Empire after at least Thanos or maybe Ronan the Accuser had been taken out. And at first when I saw her, I was like, oh, is that like a different multiverse version of Ronan the Accuser? Because that's what she looks like. And apparently it's not. I just don't keep up with Marvel Comics, but I thought like that was just, that's what the route they were going. With Marvel doing all of the different multiverses lately, I thought, oh, okay, this is a different Ronan the Accuser. But it's not. It's a separate character completely. And she's upset because in previous events that you haven't seen, Captain Marvel actually went to the Kree homeworld and destroyed the higher intelligence. And when she destroyed them, it destroyed their atmosphere, it destroyed their sun, and it destroyed their water. So the people have been dying off rapidly on that planet. And Dar-Benn is trying to get those things back to that planet. She's using this technology that opens up wormholes that can suck through the different things that she needs. So, for instance, she goes to one planet and she sucks all the water out. She goes to another planet for their sun, and she goes to another planet for their atmosphere. And so that's what she's doing. So you've got these Marvels that are all entangled with their powers, and then you've got this villain destroying other worlds to fix her home world, which is a problem that technically Carol Danvers herself created. And so you've got that conflict, and that's everything going on in this movie. Well, also you have Nick Fury in space, and you have cats giving birth to other cats. So that's everything going on in this movie. With that said, that's the best synopsis that I can give you. If that sounds like a fun time, if you're like, you know what, I would watch that in the theater, especially for the cats, well then go check it out in theaters. It is there now, but I'm sure in about 40 to 50 days, it will be on Disney Plus. And a little spoiler for the end of my review here, but that's where I'd recommend you check it out. With that said, let's get into my likes and my dislikes. My first like for this movie has to be the character of Nick Fury and Kamala Khan. They were the standouts in this movie 100%. As much as this is a follow-up to Captain Marvel, this is 100% a follow-up to Miss Marvel, which is a series that I didn't see. After seeing the character of Miss Marvel in this movie, I thought she was done so well, and if that's how she's written in the show, I would probably go back to watch that show now because I really liked her portrayal in this movie. So Miss Marvel was a standout, and so was Nick Fury. He gives so many funny lines of dialogue. He's just a really good addition to this movie. I wish we had more MCU movies where he was front and center. You get him more front and center in some of the Avengers movies and some of the Captain America movies, but otherwise he's used very sparingly. But I liked him throughout this movie. He was a really fun addition. My next like is actually the comedy in this movie, and we're going to keep talking about Nick Fury because he gives so many lines in this movie that had me laughing in the theater, and not too many other things did. Like, it didn't have the Marvel charm where they would do things that you would be like, oh, I can't believe they're doing that. Ah, that's funny. But they did have like sprinkled in humor, mostly through Nick Fury, that really did work for me. So I did think it had some of that sprinkled in MCU humor. It wasn't as good as I think other MCU properties have done that sort of sprinkled in humor where it hits just at the right time. But I did think the humor was good and good enough to put in the like category. And my final like for this movie is going to be the end credit scenes. Don't worry, I won't spoil them here, but I did enjoy both of them. The first one comes right at the end of the movie. It's almost tagged on to the end of the movie, and it's a parody of something we have seen before, and I thought it was done really well. And when it happened, I was like, oh, so that's the direction they're going with these characters. I'm into that. So that was cool. And then the post-credit scene that happens about halfway through the credits was awesome. So I really like that as well. Again, I won't spoil it here. If you want to talk about it, we can talk about it down in the comment section down below. But with that said, that's where my likes end for this movie, because I have a whole lot of issues with this movie. Let's get into them. So the first dislike I have for this movie's got to be the Captain Marvel character feeling like a B character in her own follow-up sequel. It just didn't sit well with me. I really liked the first Captain Marvel movie. I thought it was an enjoyable time. I watched it twice in theaters, and I've watched it twice since then. I don't have an issue with Brie Larson as a person, and I think that she does well as her character. But in this movie, she definitely feels like a side character. Like, the movie doesn't even open with her. She is one of the second or third people that they cut to. And I was like, really, that's how you're going to open your sequel movie, with one of the Avengers? Like, she's definitely one of the Avengers after the events of Infinity War and Endgame. She's an Avenger now, and that's how you're going to open her sequel movie. She's going to be the second or third character you cut to. Okay, so that was a little weird to me. I didn't really like that. But another thing I didn't like was either how she was written or how Brie Larson was delivering those lines. And again, I'm not a Brie Larson hater, but just the way she was delivering her lines didn't work for me at all. She just seemed like she didn't want to be there. And again, either that was her or that's how she was written. I can't really tell. But she didn't have time for the movie, and that came through in the way the actress was portraying her. But again, if that's how she was written and that's how she was supposed to be, and that's how the director was like, hey, I want her to be like she's focused on other things, she doesn't really want to be here. Okay, I understand that to a point. But it just seemed like the way Brie Larson was delivering those lines, she didn't want to be there as an actress. And so that, again, my first dislike for this movie is just the way they used Captain Marvel. And the next dislike I have for this movie, something we kind of touched on in the synopsis, in that this movie is centered around events that have not played out in the MCU yet. And what I mean by that is there feels like there's a missing piece to this Captain Marvel universe. There's the Captain Marvel movie, there's the Miss Marvel movie, there's the WandaVision show, and then there seems like there was a planned sequel to Captain Marvel where she destroys the higher intelligence, and that would have been a really good movie and probably would have been up there with the other Captain Marvel movie for me, but instead they just skip over those events. They talk about them, you see them in really quick scenes, but you don't actually get to watch those events play out in a full-length movie, and so it feels rushed just so they could get to this story where they could talk about Monica Rambeau, and they could do stuff with her, and they could talk about Miss Marvel, and they could do stuff with her, and they could do Captain Marvel, and just be like, all right, here's your kind of shoehorn side. And so it's weird that they kind of pushed all those plots together for this movie, especially when you've had so many years since that first Captain Marvel movie, so many Disney Plus shows. Like, if you wanted to do a Disney Plus show to show her destroy the higher intelligence and deal with the aftermath of that, that would have been really cool, because going into this movie as a viewer, you would have been locked into that. Like, all right, I understand why the Captain Marvel character is sort of distracted or doesn't really want to do certain things because she feels bad about the previous events. But as a viewer, you didn't get to see those previous events. And so it's like, it feels like there's a piece of the puzzle missing, and Marvel's not going to fill in that gap. They're just, oh, just go to this movie, we'll fill you in there. And I don't want to be filled in there. I want to actually watch the movie. My next dislike for this movie is the character of Monica Rambeau, and it has nothing to do with the actress. I thought she acted it very well, but after 24 hours after sitting with this movie and thinking about this movie, I was like, you could have taken every piece of Monica Rambeau out of this movie, and it would have been a better movie if they had just focused on Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel. So again, like I said in my last one, they kind of shoehorned in all these different things, and when I think about it, they really shoehorned in the Monica Rambeau character. Like, she should have gotten more time, but instead they're like, okay, we want to do something specific with her with the end credit scene that's only going to make sense if we use this character, so we have to put her in this movie. And again, you didn't need her in this movie. You could have done something else with her, given her her own movie, or just done something different. Like, you could have done that first Captain Marvel sequel and then done the Marvels, and this would have made a little more sense. Again, there's so many ideas crammed into this movie, and I don't understand why. With all of the COVID pushbacks, you had all this time to develop different stories, all these different Disney Plus stories. Like, you've got Werewolf by Night, and while I liked Werewolf by Night, what I'm getting at is you didn't have time to make one more Captain Marvel story. That doesn't make any sense to me. So all these shoehorned ideas, and when I look at the Monica Rambeau character, I'm like, yeah, you could cut her out of this movie entirely, and the movie would be the exact same with the villain and the plot and where you were going with this movie. And again, you might have had a better relationship between Miss Marvel and Captain Marvel, and that would have made a little more sense. But instead, you've got this shoehorned in Monica Rambeau story just so they can have this after credit scene to set up the next big thing. My last dislike of this movie is actually how they handled one of those elements. And this is hard because this is very spoilery. So I'm going to throw a spoiler tag up real quick because I want to be careful with what I talk about. I'll try to be careful, but if there's spoilers in here, there's a spoiler tag, you're warned. One of the worlds that Dar-Ben is taking different elements from is this world that only sings and dances to communicate. Like, they can't speak like you and me. Most of them can only understand things through song and dance, which is a weird concept, but fine. I was willing to let it go. But then they actually do a song and dance number, and it goes on way too long. It goes on so long that when Dar-Ben and the other Kree come to this universe to take their water supply and essentially destroy the planet, I was kind of like, I'm good with it. And I shouldn't have been like that, because this is actual genocide going on of them taking their water supply away from their planet and essentially dooming their planet. And I'm sitting there just like, nah, I'll allow it. It's fine. Yeah, these singing, dancing people, nope, that was annoying. I understand why you're taking their water supply. And that was kind of messed up that I felt like that. But overall, the movie made me feel like that. Overall, I'll say I'm not trying to hate on this movie too much. I know I had a lot of dislikes listed, but I did list some likes for this movie. I do think that if you're a massive Captain Marvel fan or a huge fan of the Miss Marvel TV show, then I think you will enjoy this movie. For me personally, it was very mid to lower level MCU. I wish I would have gotten more out of it, but unfortunately, that's where I'm at. So for me personally, I would recommend wait for this thing on Disney Plus. And I'm not saying don't go spend your money at the theater. If that's what you want to do, you want to go to the theater, you want to watch this thing, go ahead and do that. But for me personally, again, my recommendation is just wait for it on Disney Plus. I feel like you could watch it from the comfort of your home and have a more enjoyable time than going to the theater, buying concessions, sitting down, watching this movie and being like, oh, okay, well, that was a mid-level MCU movie. But those are just my opinions because that's my review for the Marvels. Guys, if you have seen the Marvels and you've got thoughts and you've got comments, throw that in the comment section down below. Let me know if you agree or disagree with me. I'd love to know your thoughts on this movie because going back and forth with you guys about movies is one of my favorite things to do. But finally, guys, if you liked this review and you want to see more from my channel, don't forget to hit the like button because it helps the video, it helps the channel, and it helps me right here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Alright guys, we got to the end of the Marvels movie review, and I think that it was a decent enough time at the theater, but unfortunately it doesn't get me as excited for the next Marvel event. Like, the after credit scenes, those worked for me. I was like, okay, well, when you do the payoff for those after credit scenes, then I'm interested. But as far as the MCU as a whole right now, it's just kind of mid-level. The last couple of movies have just not done it for me the way I wanted them to or the way they used to do it for me. But that is what it is. With all that said, though, guys, if you like this review and you want to check out more stuff from my channel, I've got all of my 2022 reviews right there and all of my 2023 reviews, including the MCU 2023 movies, right there.